3 weeks ago, Celine Voss was humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. Her boyfriend, Adrian Mercer, silently chose her younger sister at a luxury family dinner. The betrayal spread through their elite social circle like wildfire. Everyone expected Celine to disappear quietly, another broken woman erased by wealth and power. But tonight, at the prestigious Blackwell Winter Gala, the woman they buried walks back into the room alive. And she is not alone. Standing beside her is Damien Vale, the ruthless billionaire CEO whose name can destroy reputations with a single phone call. Stay with me until the end, hit like, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The marble staircase felt endless under Celine's heels. Every step down into the Blackwell ballroom pulled her deeper into a world that had already chewed her up and spit her out 3 weeks ago. The chandeliers overhead threw gold light across hundreds of faces, faces that had whispered about her humiliation over champagne and canapes, faces that had pitied her, faces that had enjoyed watching her fall. She could feel their eyes now, all of them. Damien Vale's hand rested lightly against the small of her back, steady and warm through the thin silk of her dress. He didn't look at her, didn't need to. His presence alone was a declaration of war. "Breathe," he murmured, voice low enough that only she could hear. "And don't let them see you bleed." Celine's lungs burned. She'd been holding her breath without realizing it. She inhaled slowly, forcing air past the tightness in her chest, and lifted her chin. The dress Damien had chosen for her, midnight blue, simple, devastating, clung to her body like armor. Her hair fell in loose waves over bare shoulders. No jewelry except small diamond earrings that caught the light when she moved. She looked nothing like the woman who had fled this world 3 weeks ago, with mascara streaking down her face. They reached the bottom of the staircase. The ballroom opened before them like a glittering trap, marble floors, towering columns wrapped in white roses, tables draped in cream silk. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable in the corner. Waiters in black vests moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that cost more than most people's rent. And standing near the center of it all, surrounded by a cluster of admirers and sycophants, was Adrian Mercer. Celine's stomach dropped. He looked exactly the same. Tall, golden-haired, effortlessly handsome in his tailored tuxedo. The kind of man who had never been told no, never been denied anything he wanted. He was laughing at something one of his friends said, head thrown back, completely at ease, like he hadn't destroyed her, like she had never existed. Beside him, draped on his arm like an expensive accessory, was Vivienne, Celine's sister. Vivienne wore red. Of course she did. A dress that screamed for attention, cut low and tight, her blonde hair swept up to show off the diamond necklace Adrian had probably bought her. She was younger than Celine by 2 years, prettier in that effortless way some women were, and she had never forgiven Celine for being born first. Now she had everything Celine had lost. "Do you want to leave?" Damien asked quietly. Celine's jaw tightened. "No." "Good." There was approval in his voice. "Then walk with me." He moved forward, and she moved with him, matching his stride. The crowd parted without him asking. People always moved for Damien Vale. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice or make threats. His reputation did the work for him. Billionaire. CEO of Vale Industries. 34 years old and already worth more than some small countries. Ruthless in business, untouchable in social circles. The kind of man who could end careers with a phone call and destroy companies before breakfast. And for reasons Celine still didn't fully understand, he had chosen to stand beside her tonight. They had met 4 days ago. Celine had been sitting in a coffee shop in the financial district, staring at her laptop screen without seeing it, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that had collapsed so completely she wasn't sure there was anything left to salvage. Her photography career had stalled years ago when she'd let Adrian convince her that his work was more important, that supporting him was what good partners did. Her friends had all been his friends first. Her apartment had been in his building. Even her credit cards had been connected to his accounts. When he left her for Vivienne, he hadn't just taken her sister. He'd taken her entire world. She hadn't noticed Damien walk into the coffee shop, hadn't noticed him sit down at the table across from hers. She'd been too deep in her own spiral, scrolling through social media posts from the dinner party where Adrian had made his choice public. Photos of him and Vivienne laughing together, her sister's hand on his chest, his arm around her waist. The comments underneath had been vicious. Poor Celine, she must be devastated. I always thought Vivian was prettier. Adrian upgraded. She'd closed the laptop so hard the screen cracked. Rough day? A voice had asked. She'd looked up to find Damien watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. He'd been wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, his black hair pushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones. The kind of features that made people stare. Something like that, she'd said, not wanting to talk, not wanting to explain. He'd studied her for a long moment. You're Celine Voss. Her stomach had twisted. If you came over here to offer pity, don't. I don't do pity. He'd leaned back in his chair, still watching her. But I do recognize wasted potential when I see it. She'd laughed bitterly. You don't know anything about me. I know your sister stole your boyfriend in front of half of New York's elite. I know you've spent the last 3 weeks hiding while everyone who matters has decided you're too weak to fight back. And I know that you're sitting here breaking laptops instead of making them regret it. Celine had stared at him. Who the hell are you? Damien Vale. He'd said it like she should already know, and she had. Everyone knew Damien Vale. And I'm going to make you an offer. I'm not interested in... The Blackwell Winter Gala is in 4 days, he'd interrupted smoothly. Adrian Mercer will be there. So will your sister. So will everyone who watched you fall apart. Come with me. She'd shaken her head. Why would I do that? Because right now they think you're finished. They think you'll disappear quietly and let them erase you, prove them wrong. His eyes had been cold, calculating. Let me show you how to walk back into that room like you own it. And what do you get out of this? She'd asked, suspicious. Damien had smiled, a sharp, dangerous thing. Entertainment. She should have said no, should have walked away from a man who looked at her like she was a chess piece he wanted to move across the board. But the truth was, she had nothing left to lose. So she'd said yes. Now, standing in the center of the Blackwell ballroom, with every eye in the room tracking their movements, Celine wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Damien steered them toward a group of investors standing near the bar. Older men in expensive suits, the kind who controlled money and influence like weapons. They turned when Damien approached, their faces shifting into expressions of calculated interest. Damien, one of them said, extending a hand, didn't expect to see you here tonight. Bernard. Damien shook his hand briefly. I had an opening in my schedule. The man's eyes slid to Celine. And who's this? Celine Voss, Damien said, his tone casual but deliberate. She's a photographer, one of the best I've seen. Celine's breath caught. She hadn't done serious photography work in years, hadn't shown her portfolio to anyone. Damien had no reason to say that, except that he knew exactly how these rooms worked, how reputations were built and destroyed with a single introduction. Bernard's expression shifted, recalculating. Voss. Any relation to the Voss family in publishing? My father, Celine said, finding her voice. Richard Voss. Recognition flickered across Bernard's face. I've done business with him. Good man. He extended his hand to her now, his grip firm. Bernard Whitmore. I run Whitmore Capital. She shook his hand, feeling the weight of Damien's lesson settling into her bones. This was how power moved in rooms like this, through names, connections, carefully placed words. Adrian had never introduced her this way. He'd kept her in the background, decorative but invisible. Damien was making her impossible to ignore. They moved through the ballroom like that for the next hour. Damien introduced her to investors, gallery owners, editors, socialites. Each introduction reshaped how people saw her. Each conversation elevated her status. And with every minute that passed, Celine felt something shifting inside her chest, something that had been buried under shame and grief for 3 weeks. Anger. Not the hot, wild kind that made people stupid. The cold, focused kind that made them dangerous. She was halfway through a conversation with a magazine editor when she felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. She turned her head slightly and found Adrian staring at her from across the room. He looked stunned, like he'd seen a ghost. Vivian stood beside him, her expression frozen somewhere between shock and fury. She'd noticed too. Of course she had. Vivian always noticed when attention shifted away from her. Celine held Adrian's gaze for 3 long seconds. Then she turned back to the editor and smiled, picking up the conversation exactly where she'd left it. It was a small thing, but in a room like this, small things were everything. By the time the string quartet shifted into a waltz, Celine's face hurt from smiling. Her feet ached in her heels. She'd shaken more hands than she could count, heard more names than she could remember. But she'd survived. More than survived. She'd walked back into the room that had tried to erase her, and she hadn't broken. "Dance with me," Damien said. It wasn't a question. He led her onto the floor before she could respond, his hand settling at her waist, the other capturing hers. The waltz was already in motion, other couples spinning across the marble in practiced elegance. Celine hadn't danced in years, but Damien moved with the kind of confidence that made it easy to follow, his step sure, his grip firm. He pulled her closer than was strictly proper, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body through their clothes. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "I stood around and let you parade me through the room like a trophy. You let them see that you're still standing. That's what matters." His dark eyes met hers. "They expected you to stay buried. You proved them wrong." Celine's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "I told you. Entertainment. Bullshit." The corner of his mouth lifted. "Careful. People are watching. Let them watch." She was tired of being careful, tired of swallowing her words and smoothing down her edges. "You don't do things for entertainment, Damien. You're too calculating for that. So what do you really want?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something dark and old and guarded. "Maybe I see something in you that I recognize." "What?" "Potential for transformation." His hand tightened at her waist. "You were humiliated in front of everyone who matters. You could have disappeared. Instead, you walked back into the fire. That takes more than courage. It takes rage." Celine's pulse jumped. "You think I'm doing this for revenge? Aren't you?" She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words stuck in her throat. Because he was right. She was angry, furious even. At Adrian for betraying her, at Vivian for taking what wasn't hers, at herself for being stupid enough to build her entire life around a man who had never truly seen her. The music swelled around them, violins climbing towards something bittersweet and haunting. "What happened to you?" Celine asked quietly. "Someone hurt you. That's why you understand this." Damien's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Her name was Isabel." Celine waited. "We were engaged," Damien continued, his voice flat, controlled. "I was 26, stupid. I believed in love back then, believed that if you gave someone everything, they'd do the same for you." His mouth twisted. "She left me for my business partner 2 weeks before the wedding, took half my company with her, nearly destroyed me." "I'm sorry," Celine said. "Don't be." His eyes were cold now. "She taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned." "What's that?" "People will always choose what benefits them most. Love is just a prettier word for transaction." He spun her smoothly, their bodies moving in perfect sync. "The sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop getting hurt." Celine's chest ached. "That's a lonely way to live." "Lonely is safe." The music ended. They stood there on the dance floor, still close, neither of them moving. Around them, other couples were breaking apart, applauding politely, returning to their tables. Damien's hand was still at her waist. Celine could feel her heartbeat in her throat. "Celine." The voice came from behind her, familiar, wrong, unwanted. She turned slowly. Adrian stood 3 feet away, looking exactly as uncomfortable as he should. Up close, she could see the strain around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He'd lost weight. "Good." "Can we talk?" he asked. Celine stared at him. 3 weeks ago, hearing his voice would have shattered her all over again. 3 weeks ago, she would have begged him to explain, to apologize, to take it back. Now she just felt cold. "No," she said. Adrian blinked. "Celine, please, I know I—" "No," she repeated, louder this time, firm, final. People were watching now. Of course they were. This was exactly the kind of drama that made events like these memorable. Celine could see faces turning toward them, conversations pausing, eyes lighting up with interest. Adrian's face flushed. "You're really going to do this here?" In front of everyone? You made your choice in front of everyone, Selene said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. I'm just returning the favor. Selene. Damien stepped forward, placing himself between them. He didn't touch Adrian, didn't need to. His presence alone was a threat. She said no, Damien said quietly. Walk away. Adrian's jaw clenched. This doesn't concern you. It does now. For a moment, Selene thought Adrian might actually be stupid enough to push it. His hands curled into fists at his sides, his face darkening with anger and humiliation. Then Vivian appeared at his elbow, her expression brittle and fake. Adrian, darling, let's get a drink. She tugged on his arm, hard enough that he had no choice but to follow or make an even bigger scene. Adrian shot Selene one last look, something desperate and ugly, before letting Vivian pull him away. The crowd around them pretended to lose interest, returning to their conversations, but Selene knew they'd all been listening. Tomorrow, this would be the story everyone told. The moment Selene Voss publicly rejected Adrian Mercer with Damien Vale standing at her side, the balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. Damien touched her elbow lightly. Let's go. Selene nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving her shaky and hollowed out. She let Damien guide her toward the exit, through the crowd, past the whispers and stares. They stepped outside into the cold December air. The street was quiet, lit by street lamps and the glow of the city skyline. A black car sat waiting at the curb, Damien's driver, probably. Selene leaned against the stone railing, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. You okay? Damien asked. I don't know. She laughed, the sound brittle. I thought I'd feel better, thought facing him would fix something. It doesn't work like that. Then what does? Damien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You stop waiting for them to fix what they broke. You build something new. Selene looked at him. His face was half in shadow, unreadable as always. But there was something in his voice, something raw underneath the control. Is that what you did? She asked. Yes. And are you happy? Damien's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm powerful. That's better. Selene wasn't sure she believed him, but before she could say anything else, her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow. Alone. V. Vivienne. Selene stared at the message, her stomach twisting. What is it? Damien asked. She showed him the screen. His expression darkened. Don't go. Why not? Because whatever she wants, it won't help you. People like her only reach out when they need something. Selene knew he was probably right, but part of her, the part that still remembered growing up with Vivian, sharing a childhood, being sisters before everything went wrong, wanted to know what Vivian had to say, wanted to hear if there was any remorse at all. I'll think about it, she said finally. Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Your choice. The car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, opening the back door. Come on, Damien said. I'll take you home. Selene hesitated, looking back at the glowing windows of the Blackwell ballroom. Inside, the gala continued without her, champagne flowing, music playing, people dancing and laughing like the world wasn't held together by cruelty and careful lies. She'd survived tonight, but she didn't feel victorious. She just felt tired. Selene slid into the back seat of the car. Damien followed, the door closing behind them with a soft click. The driver pulled away from the curb, merging smoothly into the late-night traffic. The city slid past the windows, bright lights, towering buildings, endless noise. Damien sat beside her in silence, not pushing, not asking questions. After a while, Selene said quietly, Thank you. For what? For tonight. For standing there when I couldn't stand on my own yet. Damien turned his head, studying her in the dim light. You were standing on your own the whole time, Selene. I was just making sure people noticed. She wanted to believe that. Wasn't sure she did. The car stopped in front of her apartment building, a modest brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the luxury high-rise she'd lived in with Adrian. She'd moved here 2 weeks ago with whatever belongings she could fit in her car, starting over with almost nothing. Good night, she said, reaching for the door handle. Selene. She paused, looking back. Damien's expression was serious now, all traces of his earlier amusement gone. If you meet with your sister tomorrow, be careful. She didn't text you out of guilt. She texted you because she's scared. Scared of what? Of losing what she took from you. His eyes held hers. People like Vivian don't apologize. They just try to make sure you won't come for what's theirs. Celine's pulse quickened. And what if I do want to come for it? Something dangerous flickered across Damien's face. Then let me teach you how. The air between them felt charged suddenly, electric. Celine swallowed hard. Why? Because watching you walk back into that ballroom tonight was the first interesting thing that's happened to me in years. He leaned forward slightly. And I want to see what you become when you stop playing small. Celine's breath caught. Before she could respond, Damien reached past her and opened the car door, breaking the moment. Go inside, he said. Get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. Celine nodded, not trusting her voice, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The car pulled away, disappearing into the night traffic. She stood there for a long moment, alone under the streetlights, her heart still racing. Then she walked inside, climbed the stairs to her small apartment, and collapsed onto her couch without bothering to turn on the lights. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Vivian. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the coffee shop on Mercer Street. Don't bring him. Celine stared at the message. Then she typed back a single word. Fine. She shouldn't go. She knew that. But she needed to know what Vivian wanted. Needed to hear what her sister would say now that everything had been stripped away. Now that the illusion of happy betrayal had started to crack. Celine set her phone down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight, she had survived, and that was enough. The coffee shop on Mercer Street smelled like burnt espresso and regret. Celine arrived 10 minutes early, ordered black coffee she didn't want, and took a table near the back where the light was dim and the other customers wouldn't hear every word. Her hand shook as she wrapped them around the paper cup. She told herself it was the caffeine, knew it was a lie. Vivian walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. Of course she did. Vivian had always been precise about things that made her look good. Punctuality, appearance, the careful construction of charm. She wore a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than Celine's rent, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves, her makeup flawless. She looked like someone who had never made a mistake in her life. She spotted Celine and walked over, sliding into the chair across from her without asking permission. You came, Vivian said. You asked. Vivian's mouth tightened. She set her designer purse on the table between them like a barrier. I wasn't sure you would, after last night. Celine said nothing, just waited. Vivian looked uncomfortable now, her fingers playing with the handle of her purse. Good. Let her squirm. Look, Vivian said finally, I know things are complicated between us, but we're still family. Celine laughed, a short, bitter sound. Family, right. I mean it. You slept with my boyfriend, Vivian. You let him choose you in front of everyone I knew. You destroyed me. Celine's voice was flat, empty of inflection. That was the only way to get through this without breaking. So don't sit here and talk to me about family like that word means anything between us anymore. Vivian flinched. For a second, something genuine flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or discomfort. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the defensive armor Celine knew too well. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, Vivian said quietly. But it did. I know. Vivian's hands twisted together. And I'm sorry. I am. But Adrian and I don't want to hear about you and Adrian. Celine's jaw tightened. I don't care what story you've told yourself to make this okay. I don't care if you think it's love or fate or whatever bullshit justification you've come up with. You asked me here, so tell me what you want. Vivian's eyes hardened. There it was. The real reason for this meeting, cutting through the fake apologies and manufactured guilt. I want you to stay away from him, Vivian said. Celine stared at her. What? Last night, the gala. The way you looked at him. Vivian leaned forward, her voice dropping. You're trying to get him back. For a moment, Celine couldn't speak. The sheer audacity of it choked the air from her lungs. Then the anger came roaring back, hot and sharp. Are you out of your mind? Celine hissed. You think I want him back? After what he did? Then why did you show up with Damien Vale? Vivian shot back. Everyone saw you. Everyone's talking about it. You walked in there on the arm of one of the most powerful men in New York just to make Adrian jealous. I walked in there because I refused to let you erase me. That's not what it looked like. Celine slammed her coffee cup down hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim. The couple at the next table glanced over, then quickly looked away. You don't get to do this, Celine said, her voice shaking with fury. You don't get to take everything from me and then accuse me of trying to steal it back. You wanted him? Fine. You have him. But don't you dare pretend I'm the villain here. Vivian's face went pale, then flushed red. I didn't take him from you. He chose me because you seduced him. Because he was unhappy with you. Vivian's voice rose now, losing its careful control. You were always so focused on being the perfect girlfriend, so desperate to make him happy that you forgot to be interesting. He was bored, Celine. He told me. He said being with you felt like drowning in beige. The words hit like a slap. Celine's throat closed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the white-hot pain exploding in her chest. Vivian seemed to realize she'd gone too far. Her expression shifted, panic flickering across her face. I didn't mean, get out. Celine, get the hell out. Celine's voice was low, deadly calm now. Before I do something we'll both regret. Vivian stood up quickly, grabbing her purse, but she paused, looking down at Celine with something that might have been guilt or might have been victory. Celine couldn't tell anymore. I didn't want to hurt you, Vivian said quietly, but I'm not going to apologize for being happy. Then she turned and walked out. Celine sat there alone, staring at her coffee cup, her hands shaking so badly she had to shove them under the table. Drowning in beige. That's what Adrian had said about her, about their relationship, about the years she'd spent loving him, supporting him, reshaping herself to fit into his life. Beige. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. A text from Damien. How did it go? Celine stared at the screen. She didn't know how to answer, didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound pathetic or broken. Finally, she typed, she wanted me to stay away from Adrian. Thought I was trying to get him back. Damien's response came immediately. Are you? No, good. Meet me at my office, 1 hour. Celine's pulse jumped. Why? Because you need to stop defending yourself and start building something they can't touch. She should have said no. Should have gone home, crawled into bed, and let herself fall apart in private like she wanted to. Instead, she typed, I'll be there. Vale Industries occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Celine had seen the building from the outside before. Sleek, modern, intimidating. Walking into the lobby felt like stepping into another world. Everything was steel and marble and sharp edges. Security guards in dark suits watched her approach the reception desk with expressions that gave nothing away. Celine Voss, she said to the woman behind the desk. I'm here to see Damien Vale. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted slightly, just enough to show surprise. One moment. She spoke quietly into her headset, then nodded. Mr. Vale is expecting you. 52nd floor. A security guard escorted her to a private elevator. The doors closed. The elevator shot upward so smoothly, Celine barely felt the motion. Numbers flickered on the display above the door. 20, 30, 40, 50. The doors opened onto a hallway that looked more like an art gallery than an office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Abstract paintings hung on white walls. The carpet was so thick her heels sank into it. A woman in a tailored black suit waited by the elevator. Ms. Voss, this way, please. Celine followed her down the hallway to a set of double doors at the end. The woman knocked once, then opened them. Damien's office was massive. The entire back wall was glass, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. His desk sat near the windows, clean, minimal, just a laptop and a single stack of files. Leather chairs faced each other near a bar cart in the corner. Everything about the space screamed control, precision, power. Damien stood by the windows, his back to the door, hands in his pockets. He wore a dark gray suit today, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Leave us, he said without turning around. The assistant closed the doors quietly. Celine stood there, suddenly feeling out of place in her jeans and simple sweater. This wasn't her world, wasn't her life. She was playing dress-up in someone else's story. "Sit," Damien said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. She sat. Damien turned finally, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You look like hell." "Thanks. I don't mean it as an insult." He walked over, taking the chair across from her. "I mean, you look like someone who just had their face rubbed in something they were trying to forget." Celine's hands clenched in her lap. "Vivian said Adrian told her being with me was like drowning in beige." Damien's expression didn't change. "And you believe that?" "Why wouldn't I? It's probably true." "No. It's what a coward says when he's trying to justify betrayal." Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Men like Adrian don't leave because their partner is boring. They leave because their partner sees them too clearly. You knew exactly who he was, weak, insecure, desperate for validation. That's terrifying to someone like him. So he found someone who would worship him without asking questions." Celine's throat tightened. "Vivian worships him?" "Vivian worships what he represents. Status, access, the life she thought you had." Damien's mouth curved into something cold. "But she's going to realize soon enough that Adrian Mercer is just a pretty face with an inheritance and no backbone. And when she does, she'll resent him the same way he resented you." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." His voice was certain. "Because I've seen this play out 100 times. The only difference is whether you're still standing when they destroy each other or whether you let them drag you down with them." Celine looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had walked into her life 4 days ago and turned everything upside down. "Why are you helping me? I told you, I see potential." "For what?" Damien stood up, walking to the bar cart. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. "5 years ago, I let someone destroy me. I lost my company, my reputation, everything I'd built. It took me 3 years to claw my way back. 3 years of lawsuits and sabotage and waking up every morning ready to burn the world down." He took a drink. "And I learned something important during that time." "What?" "The people who survive aren't the ones who forgive and move on. They're the ones who rebuild themselves into something their enemies can't touch." His eyes held hers. "You have a choice right now, Celine. You can keep letting Adrian and Vivian define you. Keep letting their betrayal be the most interesting thing about your life. Or you can become someone they'll never be able to hurt again." Celine's pulse hammered. "How?" "By making them irrelevant." Damien set his glass down. "Your photography. When was the last time you worked on it?" "I haven't. Not seriously. Not in years." "Why not?" "Because Adrian—" She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "It matters." Damien's voice was hard now. "You gave up your career to support his. You made yourself small so he could feel big. That's what drowning in beige really means. You were suffocating your own ambitions to make room for his mediocrity." The words cut through her like a blade, because they were true. She'd had a photography career once, small but real. A few gallery shows, some editorial work. Critics who said she had an eye for capturing emotion that most photographers missed. But Adrian had been building his real estate development company, and he'd needed her at dinners, at events, playing the role of supportive partner. And slowly over the years, her camera had stayed in its case more and more often, until she'd stopped taking it out at all. "I don't even know if I'm any good anymore," Celine said quietly. "Then find out." Damien pulled his phone from his pocket, typed something quickly, then set it down. "I'm setting up a meeting for you." "With who?" "Marcus Chen. He's the senior editor at Lens and Light magazine, one of the most influential photography publications in the country." Celine's stomach dropped. "I can't." "Yes, you can. I haven't shot anything in years. I don't have a portfolio. I don't have—" "You have 3 days," Damien interrupted. "Build a portfolio. Show him what you can do. If he likes it, he'll commission you for a piece. And if he doesn't?" Damien's expression was unreadable. "Then you'll know you need to work harder." Celine stared at him. "You can't just snap your fingers and fix my life." "I'm not trying to fix your life. I'm giving you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you." The anger came rushing back, hot and irrational, and aimed at the wrong person. You don't understand. You're Damien Vale. People take your calls. They move when you tell them to move. I'm nobody. Right now, you are. His voice was cold. But you don't have to stay that way. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to throw the glass at his smug, perfect face and walk out. But underneath the anger was something else, something desperate and hungry that she'd been trying to bury for 3 weeks. Hope. 3 days, she said. 3 days. She drained the whiskey in one burning swallow and stood up. I need my camera from Adrian's apartment. Damien's eyebrows lifted. He still has it? Everything I left behind is still there. He wouldn't let me get my stuff, said it was too painful to see me. Her jaw tightened. I've been wearing the same 5 outfits for 2 weeks because everything else is locked in his building. Damien pulled out his phone again. What's the address? She told him. He typed something, then made a call. James, I need access to a building in Tribeca, 447 West Street, apartment 3402. The tenant is Adrian Mercer. He paused. I don't care what it costs. I want her inside in the next hour. Another pause. Good. He hung up. Celine stared at him. What did you just do? Got you access to your own belongings. He checked his watch. You have 90 minutes before Adrian gets off work. My driver will take you. Get your camera. Get whatever else you need. And get out before he shows up. You can't just... I can. And I did. Damien walked to his desk, scribbling something on a business card. He handed it to her. If there's any trouble, call this number. Security will handle it. Celine looked down at the card, then back at him. Why are you doing this? Because watching Adrian Mercer's face when you walk back into his apartment and take what's yours is going to be incredibly satisfying. His eyes glinted. Assuming you're brave enough. Celine's hands curled into fists. I'm brave enough. Then prove it. The building in Tribeca looked exactly the same as it had when she'd lived there. Sleek glass facade, doorman in a pressed uniform, lobby filled with modern furniture no one ever sat on. Celine's stomach churned as Damien's driver pulled up to the curb. Wait here, she told him. Mr. Vale said to escort you inside. I don't need an escort. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, looked at her in the rearview mirror. With respect, ma'am, Mr. Vale doesn't make suggestions. Celine didn't have the energy to argue. She got out of the car. The doorman recognized her immediately. His expression shifted, surprise, discomfort, something that might have been pity. Ms. Voss, he said carefully. I didn't know you were coming by. I'm here to get my things. His face tightened. I'm not sure, Mr. Mercer. The driver stepped up beside her, handing the doorman a folded piece of paper. Ms. Voss has legal right to her personal property. Building management has been notified. The doorman read the paper, his jaw working. Then he nodded stiffly and stepped aside. Celine walked into the lobby, her heart hammering. The elevator ride up felt endless. 34 floors of memories she didn't want, wrapped in steel and glass. The doors opened onto the hallway she'd walked down 1,000 times. Her feet remembered the path to Adrian's door. Third on the left, past the abstract painting that looked like a child's finger painting but cost $20,000. She stood in front of the door for a long moment. Then she knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Still nothing. The driver pulled out his phone, spoke quietly into it, then nodded. Building management is sending someone up with a key. 2 minutes later, a flustered woman in a business suit appeared with a ring of keys. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, Ms. Voss. We were told you'd be coming. She unlocked the door and stepped back. Celine walked inside. The apartment smelled the same, expensive cologne, leather furniture, the faint chemical scent of cleaning products. Everything looked untouched, perfect, like a magazine spread. Adrian had always been obsessive about keeping things clean. Her chest tightened. This had been her home for 2 years. She'd cooked in that kitchen, slept in that bedroom, sat on that couch, watching movies while Adrian worked late. She'd built a life here, and it had all been a lie. Where do you need to go? The driver asked quietly. Celine shook herself. The bedroom closet and the den. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The bedroom door was closed. She pushed it open. The bed was made. Of course it was. But there were 2 coffee cups on the nightstand instead of 1. A red scarf draped over the chair in the corner. Vivian's scarf. Makeup on the dresser that didn't belong to Celine. Her sister had already moved in. Celine's hand shook as she opened the closet. Her clothes were pushed to one side, crammed together to make room for Vivian's designer wardrobe. She grabbed everything that was hers, dresses, jeans, sweaters, and threw them into the suitcase the driver had pulled from the car. Then she went to the den. Her camera sat on the shelf where she'd left it 3 months ago, a Canon 5D Mark IV with 3 lenses, her most expensive purchase, the tool she'd used to build her career before she let it die. She picked it up carefully, her throat closing. God, she'd missed this. The weight of it in her hands, the familiar shape of the grip, the possibility of capturing something real. Is that everything? The driver asked. Almost. Celine walked to Adrian's desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a small leather box. She opened it, pulling out the stack of printed photographs inside. Her early work, the pieces she'd been most proud of before Adrian convinced her they weren't worth pursuing. She tucked them under her arm. Now I'm done. They made it back to the elevator just as her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. What the hell are you doing in my apartment? Adrian. Someone must have told him she was here. The doorman, maybe. Or building security. Another text came through immediately. You have no right to be there. I'm calling the police. Celine's pulse spiked. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, the driver right behind her. Her phone rang. Adrian's name flashed on the screen. She answered, I'm getting my things. I have every legal right to be here. Celine, what the? You can't just break into my apartment. I didn't break in. Building management let me in. Everything I'm taking is mine. You should have called me first. His voice was tight, angry. You should have asked. Like you asked before you slept with my sister? The words came out cold, sharp. I don't owe you anything, Adrian. Not courtesy, not warning, nothing. Don't do this. I'm taking my camera and my clothes. That's it. You can keep everything else. Celine, she hung up. The elevator reached the lobby. Celine walked out, head high, refusing to run even though her hands were shaking and her heart felt like it was trying to claw its way out of her chest. The driver loaded her suitcase and camera into the trunk. Celine slid into the back seat. As they pulled away from the curb, she saw Adrian's car screech to a stop in front of the building. He jumped out, looking around frantically. But she was already gone. Otas. Celine spent the next 3 days shooting. She walked through Brooklyn at dawn, capturing commuters on their way to work. Faces tired, eyes hollow, shoulders bent under invisible weight. She shot in coffee shops and subway stations and parks, looking for the moments between moments, the spaces where people let their masks slip. She photographed a woman crying on a bench in Prospect Park, tears streaming down her face while joggers passed without looking. An old man feeding pigeons in Washington Square, his expression so lonely it made her chest ache. 2 teenagers kissing against a graffiti-covered wall in Bushwick, desperate and messy and alive. Every image she captured felt raw, unfiltered, human in a way most photography wasn't. She worked until her fingers cramped and her eyes burned. Edited late into the night, her small apartment littered with coffee cups and takeout containers. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a time since getting her camera back. But she didn't care, because for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. On the 3rd day, she called Damien. I'm ready, she said. Send me the portfolio. She'd already compiled 20 images, the best of what she'd shot. She sent them to his email and waited, her stomach in knots. 5 minutes later, her phone rang. These are good, Damien said without preamble. Better than good. Marcus is going to want to meet you. Celine's breath caught. Really? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, his office in Soho. He paused. Don't screw this up. I won't. And Celine? Yeah? Wear something that says you're serious, not something that says you're trying to impress him. She smiled despite herself. Got it. She hung up and collapsed onto her couch, adrenaline still singing through her veins. This was real. This was happening. She was doing the thing she'd given up on, the dream she'd buried to make room for someone else's ambitions. And it terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. Back. Marcus Chen's office was smaller than Celine expected, cluttered with photography books, framed prints on every wall, a desk buried under magazines and contact sheets. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that had seen better days. He looked at Celine over his reading glasses. "You're the one Damien Vale called about." "Yes." "Sit." She sat. Marcus pulled up her portfolio on his computer, clicking through the images slowly. His expression gave nothing away. Selena's hands twisted in her lap, her heart hammering so hard she thought he might be able to hear it. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You have an eye," he said. Celine's breath released in a rush. "Thank you. I didn't say it was a compliment." He gestured at the screen. "You're technically proficient. The composition is strong, but you're playing it safe. These images are good. They're not great." Celine's stomach dropped. "You're photographing sadness," Marcus continued. "Loneliness, pain, but you're doing it from the outside, like a tourist. I don't feel anything when I look at these except that you know how to work a camera." Celine's voice caught. "I don't understand." "You're hiding behind the lens, using other people's emotions instead of your own." Marcus looked at her. "What happened to you, Celine?" She stared at him. "What?" "Something broke you. Recently. I can see it in your eyes." He tapped the screen. "But I can't see it in your work. And until you're brave enough to put that pain into your images, really put it there, not just hint at it, you're never going to make anything that matters." Celine's throat closed. She wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She'd been photographing pain without actually confronting her own, hiding behind other people's stories because her own still hurt too much to touch. "I have an assignment," Marcus said, "if you want it." Celine looked up. "What kind of assignment?" "We're doing a feature on women rebuilding after personal failure. Entrepreneurs who lost everything, artists who got blacklisted, women who survived public humiliation and came back stronger." His eyes held hers. "I want you to shoot it, but I don't want pretty portraits. I want the truth. The ugly, uncomfortable human truth about what it costs to start over." Celine's pulse jumped. "When?" 2 weeks. I need 10 subjects, 15 images each. Final selection runs in the March issue." He pushed a folder across the desk. "Here's the list of women who've agreed to participate. Read their stories. Then show me what you can do when you stop hiding." Celine took the folder with shaking hands. "One more thing," Marcus said. "This feature doesn't have a byline yet. If your work is as good as Damien says it will be, your name goes on the cover." Her breath stopped. Cover credit on Lens and Light magazine. That was the kind of opportunity that launched careers. The kind of exposure most photographers spent decades trying to earn. "Don't screw it up," Marcus said. Celine nodded, not trusting her voice. She left his office in a daze, clutching the folder against her chest. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut through the buildings, throwing long shadows across the sidewalk. People rushed past, busy, distracted, wrapped up in their own lives. Celine stood there for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. This was real. This was her chance. And if she failed, everyone would know it. Her phone buzzed, a text from Damien. "How did it go?" "He gave me an assignment." "I told you he would." Celine smiled, then typed, "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Prove you deserve it." She was about to respond when another text came through, this time from Vivian. "We need to talk. It's important." Celine stared at the message, her stomach twisting. She should ignore it, should block Vivian's number and focus on the work ahead. But something in those 3 words, "it's important," made her pause. Against her better judgment, she typed back, "What do you want?" The response came immediately. "It's about Adrian. Meet me tonight. Same coffee shop, please." Celine's jaw clenched. She could feel it, the trap closing around her, pulling her back into the drama she was trying to escape. But underneath the anger was something else. Curiosity. What could possibly be important enough for Vivian to reach out again? Celine looked down at the folder in her hands, her future, her chance, everything she'd been working toward. Then she looked back at her phone. Fine. 8 p.m. She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she walked to the subway, trying to ignore the voice in her head that whispered she was making a terrible mistake. Celine arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes late on purpose. She'd learned that much from Damien. Never let people think you're waiting for them. Never show up eager. Control, he'd told her, was about making other people adjust to your rhythm, not the other way around. Vivienne was already there, sitting at the same back table they'd used before. She looked different tonight. smaller somehow. Her makeup was smudged around the eyes like she'd been crying, and her hair wasn't perfectly styled for once. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, nothing designer, nothing that screamed money and status. She looked human. Celine hated that it made her hesitate. She walked over and sat down without ordering anything this time. "You have 10 minutes. Vivian's hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you. I came because you said it was important." "It is." Vivian's voice was quiet, strained. "I need to tell you something about Adrian." Celine's jaw tightened. "I don't want to hear about your relationship." "It's not about the relationship." Vivian looked up, and her eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "It's about money. His money." Something cold slithered down Celine's spine. "What are you talking about?" Vivian glanced around the coffee shop like she was checking for listeners, then leaned forward. "Adrian's broke, Celine. Completely broke. The company, the apartment, everything. It's all falling apart." Celine stared at her. "That's impossible. He just closed a major development deal 3 months ago." "The deal fell through." Vivian's hands shook. "The investors pulled out last month. Something about zoning issues and environmental violations. Adrian tried to cover it up, tried to fix it, but it's too late. The whole thing collapsed." "How do you know this?" "Because I've been living with him for 3 weeks, and I've watched him spiral." Vivian's voice cracked. "He drinks every night now, gets phone calls at 2 in the morning from lawyers and creditors. He's going to lose everything, Celine, the apartment, the cars, the business, all of it." Celine's mind raced. 3 months ago. That was right before Adrian had started acting distant, right before he'd started spending more time with Vivian. "So you're telling me he left me because he was going broke?" Celine said slowly. Vivian looked down at her coffee. "I think he left you because he knew you'd figure it out. You always saw through his bullshit. You would have asked questions, demanded answers. I was easier. Because you didn't care about the truth. Because I was stupid enough to think he actually wanted me." Vivian's laugh was bitter, broken. "But he doesn't love me, Celine. He never did. He just needed someone who wouldn't notice he was drowning." Celine sat back in her chair, trying to process this. Adrian, the man who had humiliated her in front of everyone, who had chosen her sister over her, who had destroyed her entire life, was falling apart, losing everything. And somehow, knowing that should have felt satisfying. But it just felt empty. "Why are you telling me this?" Celine asked. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Because I don't know what else to do. He's talking about taking out loans he can't repay, making deals with people who—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Dangerous people. The kind who don't forgive debt." "That's not my problem anymore." I know it's not, but..." Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's using your name." Celine went cold. "What?" "He still has access to some of your accounts. Joint accounts you two opened when you moved in together. He's been taking out lines of credit using your information as collateral." The floor seemed to tilt under Celine's feet. "That's fraud." "I know. That could destroy my credit, my entire financial future." "I know." Vivian was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I tried to stop him. I told him it was wrong, but he said you owed him, that you'd taken years of his support, and now it was your turn to help." Celine's hands curled into fists on the table. The rage that flooded through her was white-hot, blinding. "How much?" "What? How much has he taken?" Vivian's face crumpled. "Almost 200,000. The world stopped. $200,000. Debt she didn't agree to. Loans she never took. Contracts with her signature forged on them while she'd been picking up the pieces of her shattered life. "When?" Celine's voice came out strangled. "When did this start?" "About a week after you moved out." 3 weeks. He'd been destroying her financial life for 3 weeks while she'd been trying to rebuild everything else. Celine stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. People turned to look. She didn't care. "Where are the documents?" she demanded. "In his desk, at the apartment. But Celine, you can't just watch me." She was halfway to the door when Vivian called after her. "Wait, there's something else." Celine turned. What else could there possibly be? Vivian's face was pale, sick-looking. He knows about Damien, about the assignment Marcus gave you, and he's planning something. Planning what? I don't know exactly, but I heard him on the phone yesterday with someone. He said... Vivian swallowed hard. He said if he was going down, he was taking you with him. Celine barely remembered the cab ride to Adrian's building. Her mind was spinning too fast, thoughts crashing into each other like cars on ice. $200,000. Fraud. Forgery. Her name attached to debt that could follow her for years, maybe decades. Everything she was trying to build, the photography career, the assignment, her fresh start, all of it could be destroyed by Adrian's desperation. She called Damien from the cab. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Adrian's been taking out loans in my name, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I need to get into his apartment and find the documents before he destroys them. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sending security to meet you there. Don't go in alone. I don't have time to wait. Celine, she hung up. The cab pulled up to Adrian's building. Celine threw cash at the driver and ran inside. The doorman, different one tonight, someone who didn't recognize her, started to say something, but she was already past him, hitting the elevator call button over and over like that would make it come faster. The ride up was agony. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked wild, unfamiliar, hair messy, eyes too bright, breathing too fast. She looked like someone on the edge of something terrible. The elevator doors opened. She ran down the hallway to Adrian's door and pounded on it with both fists. Open up, she shouted. I know what you did. Open this goddamn door. No answer. She pounded harder, her fists aching. Adrian, I swear to God, if you don't... The door next to Adrian's opened. An elderly woman in a bathrobe poked her head out, frowning. Young lady, it's almost 9 o'clock. Some of us are trying to... Sorry, Celine said. Not sorry at all. She turned back to Adrian's door. I know you're in there. I can see the light under the door. Still nothing. Celine pulled out her phone, pulled up Adrian's number, and called. She could hear it ringing inside the apartment, that stupid custom ringtone he'd set, some classic rock song he thought made him interesting. The ringing stopped. Someone had declined the call. He was inside, ignoring her. Fine. Celine stepped back and kicked the door as hard as she could. Pain shot through her foot. She was wearing sneakers, not exactly ideal for breaking down doors, but the door shuddered in its frame. Adrian, she screamed, you stole from me. You committed fraud. Open this door right now or I'm calling the police. The lock clicked. The door opened 6 inches, the chain still attached. Adrian's face appeared in the gap. He looked worse than Vivian had described. Unshaven, hair greasy, eyes bloodshot and wild. He wore sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. The smell of alcohol wafted out. You need to leave, he said. His voice was slurred, unsteady. Give me the documents. What documents? Don't play stupid. The loans, the credit lines, the contracts you forged with my name, all of it. Adrian's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile or might have been a grimace. I don't know what you're talking about. Vivian told me everything. His face changed, anger flashing across it, raw and ugly. That bitch! I knew she'd... He stopped himself, shaking his head. You need to leave, Celine. This doesn't concern you anymore. You used my name to steal $200,000. That absolutely concerns me. I didn't steal anything. Those were joint accounts. I had every right. We weren't together anymore. You had no right to touch anything connected to me. Adrian laughed, a horrible, broken sound. You think you're so innocent? You think you didn't benefit from my money all those years? The apartment, the dinners, the trips? You lived off me, Celine. This is just collecting what you owed. The rage that had been simmering inside her boiled over. I supported your business. I gave up my career for you. I spent 2 years making you look good at events while you built your company. And I paid for everything while you played with your camera. His eyes were cruel now, vicious. You want to talk about debt? You owe me 2 years of rent, of food, of every single thing I bought for you while you pretended to be an artist. Celine's hands shook. Open this door. No. Open it or I'm calling the police right now. Go ahead. Adrian's smile widened, ugly and triumphant. Call them. Tell them your ex-boyfriend used joint accounts that legally had both our names on them. See how far that gets you." He started to close the door. Celine shoved her foot into the gap. "You're going to give me those documents. Tonight. Or what?" Adrian leaned close to the crack, his breath sour with whiskey. "You'll sick your billionaire boyfriend on me? You think Damien Vale gives a shit about you? He's using you, Celine. Same way I did. The only difference is he's better at hiding it. He's helping me rebuild my career. He's helping himself to you." Adrian's voice dropped, vicious and intimate. "That's what men like him do. They find broken women and fix them up just enough to feel powerful. Then they get bored and move on to the next project. You're not special. You're just available." The words hit like physical blows. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, but she couldn't, because wasn't that exactly what Damien had done? Found her at her lowest, offered to help, and pulled her into his orbit? She didn't even know why he'd chosen her that day in the coffee shop. Didn't understand what he actually wanted from her. Entertainment, he'd said. What if Adrian was right? "Get your foot out of my door," Adrian said quietly, "or I'm calling building security." Celine pulled her foot back. The door slammed shut. She stood there in this hallway, her whole body shaking, staring at the closed door. Behind her, the elevator dinged, probably Damien's security arriving. Too late. Everything was too late. She'd lost. Again. Adrian had destroyed her, and there was nothing she could do about it because he was right. The accounts had both their names. Any lawyer would say he had legal access, even if morally he'd committed fraud. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet." Celine's blood went cold. She opened the message thread. Another text came through immediately. "Check your email." Her hand shook as she opened her email app. The newest message had no sender name, just a string of numbers. The subject line was empty. She opened it. Inside was a single attachment, a PDF document. Celine downloaded it, her heart hammering. It was a police report, filed 2 days ago. Adrian's signature at the bottom. She scanned the text, her eyes catching on phrases that didn't make sense at first. Harassment, stalking behavior, threatening phone calls, break-in at residence, stolen property. And then she saw it. Her name. Suspect. Celine Marie Voss. Adrian had filed a police report against her, claiming she'd broken into his apartment, stolen valuables, and made threatening phone calls, claiming she'd been harassing him since their breakup. None of it was true, but it was documented. Official. Her name in a police database attached to accusations of criminal behavior. Another text came through. "Drop whatever you're planning, walk away, or I send this to every gallery, magazine, and editor in New York. See how far your photography career goes with a police record." Celine couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about money anymore. Adrian was destroying her future, systematically, deliberately, making sure that even if she clawed her way back, she'd never escape the shadow of who he'd accused her of being. The elevator doors opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, Damien's security. They saw her standing in the hallway and walked over quickly. "Ms. Voss," one of them said, "Mr. Vale sent us to—" "I need to leave," Celine interrupted. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "I need to leave right now. Did you get the documents?" "There are no documents?" The lie came easily, because if Damien knew about the police report, he'd try to fix it. And fixing it would mean lawyers and questions and investigations that would take months. The assignment was in 2 weeks. Marcus needed her work in 2 weeks. She couldn't afford for any of this to be public. "Ma'am, Mr. Vale specifically instructed us to—" "Tell him I changed my mind." Celine pushed past them toward the elevator. "Tell him I'm handling it myself." She didn't wait for their response. Just hit the elevator button, stepped inside when the doors opened, and pressed the button for the lobby over and over until the doors closed. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls. She looked like a stranger. Someone desperate. Cornered. Exactly what Adrian had wanted her to become. The elevator descended. Celine pulled out her phone and opened her text thread with Damien. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." She typed it out, her fingers shaking. Her thumb hovered over the send button. Everything Damien had done for her, the gala, the introductions, the meeting with Marcus, all of it had been leading somewhere. building towards something. And if Adrian was right, if Damien really was just using her as entertainment, then walking away now would mean losing her only ally. But if Adrian was wrong, if Damien actually cared, then she was about to destroy the one real chance she had left. Celine stared at the unsent message. Then she deleted it. She couldn't send it to Damien, not yet. Not until she figured out what the hell she was going to do about the police report, the debt, the web of lies Adrian had spun around her. The elevator reached the lobby. She walked out, past the concerned-looking doorman, out onto the street. The night air was cold, sharp. It cut through her jacket and made her eyes water. Or maybe she was crying. She couldn't tell anymore. Celine started walking, no destination in mind, just moving because standing still hurt too much. Her phone rang. Damien's name on the screen. She declined the call. It rang again immediately. She declined again. A text came through. "Where are you?" She didn't answer. Another text. "My security said you left without the documents. What happened?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should tell him, should explain about the police report and the threats, and the fact that Adrian had turned her life into a minefield she couldn't navigate without destroying herself. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she typed, "I need space. Please." She sent it before she could change her mind. Then she turned off her phone and kept walking. Mumkin. Celine ended up at a bar in the East Village. Some dive with sticky floors and a jukebox playing songs that were popular before she was born. She ordered whiskey and sat in the corner booth nursing it while the world continued around her, indifferent to her collapse. An hour passed. Maybe 2. She wasn't keeping track. The whiskey burned on the way down, but didn't fix anything, just made the edges of her thoughts softer, blurrier. Her phone, still off, sat on the table like an accusation. She should turn it on, should check her messages, should deal with the disaster her life had become instead of hiding in a bar, pretending none of it existed. But she couldn't, not yet. Someone slid into the booth across from her. Celine looked up, expecting a drunk stranger trying to hit on her. It was Vivian. "How did you find me?" Celine asked, her voice hoarse. "I've been following you since you left Adrian's building." Vivian looked terrible. Makeup completely gone now, eyes swollen from crying. "I saw you walk for almost an hour. Then you came in here. And you just followed me? For an hour?" "I didn't know what else to do." Vivian's hands twisted together on the table. "After you left the coffee shop, I went back to the apartment. Adrian was on the phone with someone. He was laughing, talking about how he'd finally figured out how to make you disappear." Celine's stomach clenched. "The police report." Vivian nodded. "He's planning to escalate it, file for a restraining order, make it so you can't get near him or anyone connected to him without risking arrest." "That's insane. None of it's true." "It doesn't matter." Vivian's voice was flat, defeated. "He has documentation. Photos of the broken laptop from the coffee shop, security footage of you entering the building without permission, text messages you sent that he's going to twist into threats. He's been building a case against you for weeks, Celine, and I didn't—" Her voice cracked. "I didn't realize what he was doing until it was too late." Celine drained the rest of her whiskey. The burn felt good this time. Felt like something real in a world that had stopped making sense. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I'm the reason you're in this mess." Vivian's eyes were wet again. If I just kept my hands off your boyfriend, none of this would have happened. You'd still have your life, your career, everything. You didn't force him to commit fraud." "No, but I made it easier for him to destroy you." Vivian reached across the table, her hand stopping inches from Celine's. "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know you hate me, but I'm sorry." Celine looked at her sister, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Vivian had always been the pretty one, the charming one, the one their parents liked better because she knew how to play their games. But right now she just looked broken, same as Celine. "What happened to us?" Celine asked quietly. Vivian's laugh was bitter. "We grew up competing for scraps of attention from people who didn't actually love either of us enough. And then we spent our whole lives trying to win a game nobody could win. You won. You got Adrian. Adrian's a bankrupt narcissist who's going to drag both of us down with him if we don't stop him. Vivian pulled something from her jacket, a flash drive. She set it on the table between them. Copies of everything, the loan documents, the forged signatures, the emails between him and the creditors, all of it. Celine stared at the flash drive like it might explode. How did you get this? His password is still 1989 Mercer. He's never been smart about security. Vivian pushed the drive towards Celine. Take it. Use it. Destroy him before he destroys you. Why would you help me? You're still living with him. Not after tonight. Vivian's jaw tightened. I packed a bag while he was passed out drunk. I'm done. With him. With this whole toxic mess. I'm going to stay with a friend upstate for a while, figure out what the hell I'm doing with my life. Celine picked up the flash drive carefully, like it might burn her. It was so small. Such a tiny object to hold this much power. What happens to Adrian when I use this? She asked. Prison, probably. If you press charges, at minimum his career is over, his reputation is destroyed. He loses everything. Vivian met her eyes. Which is exactly what he deserves. Celine's fingers closed around the drive. This was it. The evidence she needed to stop Adrian, to protect herself, to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else the way he'd hurt her. But using it would mean war. It would mean lawsuits and police investigations, and her life dragged through the mud in public. It would mean months, maybe years, of legal battles while she tried to rebuild a career that might not survive the exposure. And the assignment, Marcus's assignment, her one chance to prove she was more than just Adrian Mercer's ex-girlfriend, would have to wait. Maybe indefinitely. I can't, Celine said finally. Vivian's face fell. What? I have an assignment due in 2 weeks, a major feature for Lens and Light magazine. If I go to war with Adrian now, I lose everything I've been working toward. He's going to destroy you anyway, not if I give him what he wants. Which is what? Celine stood up, pocketing the flash drive. Her head was clearer now, the whiskey burned off by adrenaline and desperation. He wants me to disappear, to go quietly, to stop being a problem. So you're just going to let him win? No? Celine pulled out her wallet and threw cash on the table for the drink. I'm going to make him think he won, and then I'm going to finish the assignment, launch my career, and once I'm too visible to touch, once I'm someone the press actually cares about, I'm going to bury him with his own crimes. Vivian stared at her. That's actually smart. I learned from the best. Celine thought of Damien, his cold calculation, his patient cruelty. Sometimes the best revenge is making yourself untouchable first. She turned to leave. Celine, Vivian called after her. Celine looked back. I really am sorry, Vivian said quietly, for all of it. Celine wanted to say she forgave her, wanted to say it was okay, but it wasn't okay, and she didn't know if she'd ever forgive Vivian for what she'd taken. So she just nodded and walked out of the bar. Outside, the city had shifted into its late-night rhythm. Fewer cars, darker streets, the kind of quiet that only happened after midnight. Celine pulled out her phone and turned it on. 23 missed calls, 15 text messages, all from Damien. The most recent one, sent 10 minutes ago. If you don't respond in the next hour, I'm sending people to find you. Celine's chest tightened. She called him. He answered before the first ring finished. Where the hell are you? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. East Village. I'm heading home now. Silence on the other end. Then, what happened at Adrian's apartment? Celine closed her eyes. This was the moment. Tell him the truth and risk him taking over, fixing things his way, derailing everything. Or lie and handle it herself. He wasn't there, she said. The lie tasted like ash. The apartment was empty. I couldn't get the documents. More silence. Longer this time. You're lying, Damien said finally. Celine's breath caught. I'm not. Yes, you are. I can hear it in your voice. Something happened and you're not telling me. His voice was hard now, controlled anger barely hidden underneath. What happened, Celine? Nothing I can't handle. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. She started walking toward the subway. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Damien, but I need to figure some things out on my own. That's a mistake. Maybe, But it's mine to make. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking again. From the cold, or the adrenaline, or the weight of the flash drive in her pocket, she couldn't tell. Celine descended into the subway station, swiped her card, and waited on the platform for the train. A few other people stood scattered along the platform, everyone carefully not looking at each other the way New Yorkers did at this hour. The train arrived with a screech of metal on metal. Celine stepped inside and found a seat near the door. The car was mostly empty except for a homeless man sleeping at the far end and a young couple speaking quietly in Spanish. She pulled out the flash drive and stared at it. Everything Adrian had done was on this tiny piece of plastic. Every crime, every betrayal, every piece of evidence she needed to destroy him. But using it now would destroy her too. So she'd wait. She'd finish the assignment, build her career back up, make herself too valuable, too visible, too important for Adrian's lies to stick. And then, only then, she'd show the world exactly who Adrian Mercer really was. The train lurched forward into the tunnel, carrying her toward home, toward the work waiting in her apartment, toward a future she was going to build with her own hands, even if it killed her. She just had to survive the next 2 weeks without falling apart. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Damien. "You're making a mistake shutting me out, but I'll respect your choice. For now." Then a second later. "Don't forget, Marcus needs your work in 2 weeks. Focus on that. Everything else can wait." Celine stared at the message. Maybe Damien really did understand. Or maybe he was just good at saying exactly what she needed to hear. She didn't know anymore. Didn't know who to trust, who to believe, who was helping and who was using her. All she knew was that in 2 weeks, she had to deliver something extraordinary. And right now, covered in other people's destruction and her own desperation, she had no idea how she was going to pull that off. The train emerged from the tunnel into an elevated section, and through the scratched windows, Celine could see the city sprawling out in every direction. Millions of lights, millions of stories, millions of people fighting their own battles. She was just one more. Celine didn't sleep for the next 13 days. She shot during the day, tracking down the women on Marcus's list, sitting with them in their apartments and offices and studios, listening to their stories of failure and reinvention while her camera captured the truth beneath their words. At night, she edited until her eyes burned and her hands cramped, pushing through exhaustion with coffee and sheer willpower. The assignment became everything. The only thing. The singular focus that kept her from thinking about Adrian's threats or Damien's silence or the flash drive hidden in her desk drawer like a loaded gun. She photographed Elena Reyes, a former tech CEO who'd lost her company to a hostile takeover and spent 2 years rebuilding from nothing. The image Celine captured showed Elena's hands, scarred from working construction jobs to pay rent, holding her new company's business card. She photographed Jordan Price, a chef who'd been blacklisted after speaking out against workplace harassment. Jordan stood in her new restaurant kitchen at 4 in the morning, flour dusting her forearms, her expression fierce and exhausted and alive. She photographed Maya Sullivan, an artist who'd survived her gallery dropping her after a public mental health crisis. Maya sat surrounded by the paintings she'd created during her breakdown, violent slashes of color and rage that galleries now fought to display. Each woman's story was different, but they all had the same look in their eyes, that particular kind of hardness that came from being destroyed and choosing to stand back up anyway. Celine knew that look. She saw it in her own mirror every morning. By day 12, she had shot 9 of the 10 subjects. The images were raw, unflinching, exactly what Marcus had asked for. Not pretty, not comfortable, just human. But she was missing the 10th subject. The list Marcus had given her included a name at the bottom with no contact information, just a note scrawled in his handwriting. TBD, waiting on confirmation. Celine had called his office 3 times asking about it. Each time his assistant said Marcus was handling it personally, that she'd have the information soon. On day 13 at 11 o'clock at night, Marcus finally called. "I found your 10th subject," he said without preamble. Celine sat up from where she'd been slumped over her laptop. "Who?" "Isabella Chen." The name meant nothing to Celine. "Okay, what's her story?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "She was engaged to Damien Vale 6 years ago. He was nobody back then, just another guy with startup capital and big dreams. She left him for his business partner 2 weeks before the wedding, took half his company, nearly destroyed him. Celine's blood went cold. What? It's one of the most infamous betrayals in the New York business community. Vale spent 3 years in court getting his company back, then another 2 systematically destroying his ex-partner's reputation. Isabella disappeared from public life entirely. Until now. Where is she? Brooklyn. She agreed to meet tomorrow at noon. I'm texting you the address. Marcus paused. You didn't know about this? No? Interesting. Vale never mentioned it? Celine's hands were shaking. Damien had mentioned Isabella that night at the gala, told her the story of betrayal, the lesson he'd learned about people only caring about what benefits them most. But he'd never said her last name, never suggested she was still in New York, never mentioned she might be part of this assignment. This is a conflict of interest, Celine said. I can't photograph Damien's ex. Why not? Because he's... She stopped. What was Damien to her exactly? Not her boyfriend, not even really her friend. He'd helped her, yes. Introduced her to the right people, opened doors. But she still didn't know why. Still didn't understand what he actually wanted from her. He's involved in your life, Marcus finished. I know, that's why this is perfect. How is this perfect? Because if you can photograph the woman who taught Damien Vale how to survive betrayal, and do it honestly without making it about him, then you'll prove you're a real photographer, not just someone he's propping up. Marcus's voice was firm. Tomorrow, noon. Don't miss it. He hung up. Celine sat there in the dark of her apartment, her laptop screen the only light, staring at the text message with Isabella's address. This was a test. Marcus was testing whether she could separate her personal life from her work, whether she was strong enough to photograph difficult truths even when they hit too close to home. And maybe, probably, Damien had known this was coming. Maybe this whole assignment had been leading here from the beginning. Celine grabbed her phone and pulled up Damien's number. She'd barely spoken to him in almost 2 weeks. A few brief texts about the assignment, nothing personal. He'd given her space like he'd promised, or he'd been waiting for this moment. Her thumb hovered over the call button, then she set the phone down. No. She'd finish the assignment first. Shoot Isabella, complete the work, deliver it to Marcus. Then she'd deal with whatever game Damien was playing. The address Marcus had sent led to a small photography studio in Williamsburg, tucked between a coffee roaster and a vintage furniture shop. Celine arrived 10 minutes early, her camera bag heavy on her shoulder, her hand steady despite the knot of anxiety in her gut. The studio door was propped open. Inside, natural light poured through enormous windows, illuminating white walls covered in black and white portraits. The work was good, technically perfect, emotionally distant. The kind of photography that looked impressive but didn't make you feel anything. A woman stood by the windows adjusting a camera on a tripod. Isabella Chen was smaller than Celine expected. Petite, Asian, maybe 35, with straight black hair cut in a sharp bob, and the kind of bone structure that cameras loved. She wore all black, jeans, turtleneck, boots, and moved with precise efficiency. She looked up when Celine entered. You're early. So are you. Isabella's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. Marcus said you'd be professional. I appreciate that. She gestured to a chair positioned near the window. I assume you want to start with the interview portion? Celine set her camera bag down carefully. Actually, I'd like to talk first, off the record. Isabella's eyebrows lifted. About? Damien. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Isabella studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she walked to a small table in the corner and poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher. She handed one to Celine. He sent you, Isabella said. It wasn't a question. No, he doesn't know I'm here. But you know about us, about what happened. Only what Marcus told me. Celine took a sip of water, her throat suddenly dry. And what Damien mentioned once, that you left him, that it nearly destroyed him. Isabella laughed, a short, bitter sound. Is that the story he tells? Isn't it true? Parts of it. Isabella leaned against the table, arms crossed. I did leave him. I did take half the company, but the version where I'm the villain and he's the victim, that's incomplete. Celine's pulse quickened. What's the complete version? Isabella was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant. Damien and I met in college. He was brilliant, ambitious, absolutely certain he was going to change the world. I fell in love with that certainty, with the way he saw potential in everything. She paused. Including me. What changed? He did. Or maybe I just finally saw who he really was. Isabella's jaw tightened. Damien doesn't love people. He acquires them, molds them into the shape he needs. And if you don't fit that shape, if you want something different than what he's planned, you become a problem to solve. The words hit Celine like ice water. When I told him I wanted to delay the wedding so I could finish my graduate program, he scheduled the ceremony anyway. When I said I wanted to keep my own apartment, he signed a lease on a place big enough for both of us without asking. Every decision became his decision. Every choice became his choice. And if I pushed back, he'd look at me like I was being irrational, ungrateful. Selena's hands were shaking. She set the water glass down before she dropped it. His business partner saw what was happening, Isabella continued. Saw me drowning, offered me a way out. So I took it. And yes, I took half the company too because I'd built half of it while Damien took all the credit. Her eyes hardened. He spent 3 years destroying us both for that. My partner lost everything. I lost my career, my reputation, my entire life in New York. I had to rebuild from nothing. Then why are you here? Why agree to this interview? Because Marcus asked, and because I'm tired of hiding. Isabella pushed off the table, standing straight. I spent 6 years letting Damien's version of our story be the only one people heard. I'm done with that. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. Everything Isabella described, the control disguised as help, the decisions made without input, the expectation of gratitude instead of partnership, sounded exactly like what Damien was doing to her. The gala, the introductions, the assignment, all of it on his terms, his timeline, his conditions. She thought he was helping her rebuild, but maybe he was just building her into someone who served his purposes. He's doing it to you too, isn't he? Isabella said quietly. Celine looked up sharply. What? That's why you're here. Why you look like you just figured something out. Isabella's expression was almost sympathetic. He found you broken and offered to fix you, made you feel like you couldn't survive without him, and now you're starting to wonder what he actually wants in return. He's been helping me, Celine said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. Has he, or has he been positioning you exactly where he wants you? Celine opened her mouth to argue, to defend Damien, to explain that he'd given her opportunities she never would have had otherwise, but the words stuck in her throat. Because Isabella was right. Every door Damien had opened, he'd opened for a reason. Every introduction had served his purposes as much as hers, and she'd been so desperate for help, so grateful to not be drowning anymore, that she hadn't questioned any of it. What does he want from me? Celine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Isabella shook her head. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not about your well-being. Damien doesn't do charity. Everything is transactional with him. You just haven't figured out your side of the transaction yet. Celine's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling hands. A text from Damien. How's the final shoot going? She stared at the message. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd probably known from the beginning that Isabella would be the 10th subject. Had probably arranged it somehow, another chess piece moved into position. But why? What was the endgame? You should still shoot me, Isabella said, pulling Celine's attention back. Whatever Damien's planning, the work matters more. These women's stories matter more. Celine looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd survived Damien Vale and rebuilt a life afterward, who stood here now, willing to tell her truth even knowing what it might cost. Okay, Celine said finally. Let's do this. For the next 2 hours, Celine worked. She photographed Isabella in the studio, in the harsh natural light that showed every line on her face, every shadow under her eyes. They talked about betrayal and survival and the cost of starting over. Isabella's story poured out, raw, honest, complicated. Not a villain origin story, just a woman who'd made impossible choices and lived with the consequences. The final image Celine captured showed Isabella standing by the window, her reflection in the glass creating a double exposure, present and past overlapping, neither one complete without the other. It was perfect, brutal and beautiful and true. When they finished, Isabella walked Celine to the door. Be careful, she said quietly. Damien's very good at making you think you need him, but you don't. You never did. Celine nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked out into the cold afternoon, her camera bag weighing nothing compared to the questions crushing her chest. Her phone rang. Damien. She answered. Hi. Are you finished with the assignment? His voice was warm, casual, like they were friends catching up. Yes? Good. We should celebrate. Dinner tonight. My place. 8 o'clock. It wasn't a question. Never was with Damien, and that Celine realized was the problem. I can't, she said. I need to edit the final images. Get everything to Marcus by tomorrow. The editing can wait. No, it can't. Silence on the other end. She could feel his displeasure through the phone line. Celine, he said carefully. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just focused on the work. You're lying again. I'm hanging up now. Don't. The single word was sharp, commanding. Celine's hand tightened on the phone. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not telling you. I'm asking. No, you're not. You never ask, Damien. You just decide things and expect everyone to go along with it. Another silence. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. You talked to Isabella. Yes. And she told you I'm some kind of monster. She told me her version of what happened, which is very different from yours. She's bitter, vindictive. She's been trying to ruin my reputation for years. Or maybe she's just telling the truth. Damien's laugh was harsh. You think you know the truth after one conversation, after she spent 2 hours poisoning you against me? I think I've been too grateful to ask the right questions. Celine's voice was shaking now, anger and fear mixing together. Why did you really approach me that day in the coffee shop? Why did you offer to help me? I told you, I saw potential. Potential for what? What do you actually want from me, Damien? I want... He stopped. She could hear him breathing, trying to control his temper. I've invested significant time and resources into your career, Celine. I've opened doors most photographers would kill for. I've given you opportunities you never would have had without me. And this is how you repay that? By accusing me of having ulterior motives? You haven't answered the question. The question is insulting. Then the answer should be easy. Celine's heart was hammering. Tell me why you helped me. What you want in return. Because Isabella's right. You don't do anything without a reason. Isabella doesn't know me anymore. Then help me know you, right now. What do you want? The silence stretched out so long Celine thought he might have hung up. Then Damien said very quietly, I want you to trust me. Why? Because I'm trying to help you become someone they can't destroy, or someone you can control. That's not... His voice rose, then cut off sharply. When he spoke again, it was carefully neutral. Come to dinner tonight. Let's talk about this in person, like adults. No. Celine, I need space, Damien. I need to think. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But like I said before, it's mine to make. She hung up. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Celine stood on the sidewalk, people rushing past her, the city continuing its endless motion around her frozen moment. Everything was falling apart. Adrian was trying to destroy her with fraud and fake police reports. Damien might be using her for reasons she didn't understand. And in less than 24 hours, she had to deliver a completed assignment that could make or break her entire future. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Damien. You want the truth? Fine. Come to the gala tonight. The Blackwell Winter Charity event. Same place where this all started. I'll be there. So will Adrian. And you'll see exactly what I've been trying to protect you from. Celine stared at the message. The Blackwell again. Full circle. A second text came through. Or don't come. Finish your assignment. Play it safe. But you'll never know what you missed. It was manipulation. Obviously. Dangling information she wanted, making her come to him on his terms. But it was also an answer. Whatever Damien had been planning, whatever this had all been leading toward, it was happening tonight. Celine pulled up her text thread with Marcus. Assignment complete. Can I drop off the files tonight instead of tomorrow? His response came immediately. Tonight works. My office. 6 p.m. She had 3 hours to edit the final images, compile the portfolio, and deliver it to Marcus. Then she'd decide whether to go to the gala, whether to find out what Damien had really been planning all along. Mike. Celine barely remembered the editing process. Her hands moved on autopilot, adjusting exposure and contrast, selecting the strongest images, arranging them in order that told the complete story. 10 women, 150 images, each one a testament to survival and transformation. The final image in the series was Isabella's double exposure portrait. Celine stared at it for a long moment. Then she saved the file and burned everything to a drive. At exactly 6 o'clock, she walked into Marcus's office. He was waiting, glasses pushed up on his head, sleeves rolled up. "Let's see it." Celine handed him the drive. Marcus plugged it into his computer and pulled up the images one by one. His expression gave nothing away. He just clicked through them slowly, studying each one. Celine's heart hammered in the silence. Finally, after what felt like hours, Marcus sat back. "These are extraordinary," he said. Celine's breath released in a rush. "Really? You did exactly what I asked. You showed the truth, not the pretty version, the real version." He gestured at the screen. "This one of Jordan Price in her kitchen. You can see the exhaustion, the determination, the absolute refusal to quit. It's visceral." "Thank you." "And this one." He pulled up Isabella's portrait. "Who is she?" Celine's throat tightened. "Her name is Isabella Chen. She's a photographer. Her story is complicated." "They're all complicated. That's what makes them interesting." Marcus studied the image. "There's something different about this one, though. It feels more personal." Because it was personal. Because looking at Isabella's face, Celine had seen her own future. The version where she survived Damien's control and rebuilt on her own terms. "I'm putting these in the March issue," Marcus said. "Cover feature, your name on the masthead. And I want you to consider a follow-up series for later this year. Similar concept, different subjects." Celine couldn't speak, could barely process what he was saying. This was it. Everything she'd been working toward. The career she'd given up. The dream she'd buried. All of it coming back to life. "Thank you," she managed finally. Marcus pulled a contract from his desk drawer. "Standard contributor agreement. Sign here and here. I'll have accounting set up your payment." Celine signed with shaking hands. When she left Marcus's office 20 minutes later, the sun had already set. The city was shifting into night, lights flickering on in windows, people heading to dinners and parties, and lives that didn't involve constant crisis. Celine stood on the sidewalk, her empty camera bag on her shoulder, and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Damien, 2 text messages. "The gala starts at 8. You have an hour to decide." And then, sent 5 minutes ago, "Adrian just arrived. With Vivian. Whatever you think you know about them, you're wrong. Come find out why." Celine's jaw clenched. She should go home, should celebrate finishing the assignment, should let Damien and Adrian destroy each other without her. But she couldn't, because if Damien was telling the truth, if there was something about Adrian she didn't know, something that changed everything, she needed to know what it was. The flash drive was still hidden in her apartment, loaded with evidence of Adrian's crimes, evidence she'd been planning to use once her career was secure. But what if there was more? What if Damien had been gathering his own evidence all along? Celine pulled out her phone and called a car. She was going to the gala. Not because Damien told her to, but because she was done letting other people control the narrative of her life. The Blackwell Ballroom looked exactly the same as it had 6 weeks ago. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, wealthy people in expensive clothes, pretending to care about charity while actually caring about status. But Celine was different. She wore black this time. Simple dress, no jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked like someone who didn't need to impress anyone, someone who had come for a purpose. The security guard at the entrance checked her name against the guest list. "You're not on here," he said. "Check again." "I'm Damien Vale's guest." The guard made a call, listened, then nodded and stepped aside. "Go ahead." Celine walked into the ballroom. The crowd parted for her without her asking. She'd learned that much from Damien, how to move through rooms like she belonged there, like she owned every space she occupied. She spotted Adrian immediately. He stood near the bar with Vivian on his arm, both of them dressed like they hadn't lost everything. Adrian wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than he could afford. Vivienne wore red again, same desperate grab for attention she always reached for. They looked perfect. They looked terrified. Adrian saw Celine and his face went white. She walked straight toward them. "We need to talk," she said when she reached them. Adrian's jaw clenched. "There's nothing to talk about. The police report, the forged loans, all of it." Celine kept her voice low, calm. "I have evidence, Adrian. Everything Vivienne gave me, and I'm going to use it unless you withdraw everything. Tonight." Vivienne's eyes widened. "I didn't think you'd actually—" "Shut up," Adrian hissed at her. Then to Celine, "You're bluffing. Try me." Adrian's hands curled into fists at his sides. Around them, people were starting to notice the confrontation, conversations dying, eyes turning toward them. "You really want to do this here?" Adrian asked, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "I want you to fix what you broke. Sign documents withdrawing the police report, cancel the credit lines in my name, or I go to the authorities with evidence of fraud. You'll destroy yourself too. Maybe, but I'll take you down with me." Celine stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "And unlike you, I don't have anything left to lose." Adrian's face twisted. For a second, she thought he might actually hit her. Then a hand landed on her shoulder. Damien. He'd appeared out of nowhere, immaculate in his tuxedo, his expression unreadable. "Causing a scene, Adrian?" Damien asked mildly. "This doesn't concern you, Vale." "Actually, it does." Damien's hand tightened on Celine's shoulder. "Since I'm the one who's been documenting your financial crimes for the past month." The bottom dropped out of Celine's stomach. Adrian went even paler. "What? Did you really think I'd let you destroy her without consequences?" Damien's smile was cold, dangerous. "I've had investigators tracking every transaction, every forged signature, every illegal loan. I have enough evidence to put you in prison for a decade." Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was hearing. Damien had been investigating Adrian all this time. While she'd been working on the assignment, while she'd been struggling to figure out what to do, Damien had been quietly gathering ammunition. "Why?" she whispered. Damien looked down at her. "Because you deserved better than fighting this battle alone." Adrian laughed, a horrible, broken sound. "You think you're protecting her? You're using her. Same way you use everyone." "The difference," Damien said quietly, "is that I'm honest about what I want." "And what do you want?" Damien's eyes were black, cold. "I want you to understand what happens to people who try to destroy things I've built." The air in the ballroom felt electric, charged with violence barely contained. Celine stepped between them, facing Damien. "Stop," she said. Damien's expression didn't change. "Celine, I said stop." Her voice was shaking. "This isn't about protecting me. This is about control, about winning, about making sure everyone knows you're the most dangerous person in the room." "That's not—" "Yes, it is." She was shouting now, past caring who heard. Isabella was right. You don't help people. You acquire them, mold them, use them, and I've been so desperate not to drown that I let you. Damien's jaw tightened. "I gave you opportunities you never would have had. Because it served your purposes. Because you needed—" She stopped, stared at him. "What do you need from me, Damien? What was this all for?" The question hung in the air between them. Around them, the entire ballroom had gone silent. Hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. Damien looked at her for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "I needed to know if it was possible." If what was possible? If someone could survive the same thing that destroyed me, and choose different. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Celine stared at Damien, her chest tight, trying to understand what he'd just said. Around them, the ballroom had gone silent. Hundreds of people watching, waiting, holding their breath for whatever came next. "Choose differently," Celine repeated slowly. "Choose differently from what?" Damien's jaw worked. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain, vulnerable, human in a way that made her heart twist. "From what I did," he said quietly. "When Isabella left me, I turned into someone who trusted no one, who saw every relationship as a transaction, who built walls so high that nothing could touch me. His eyes held hers. I wanted to see if someone could go through the same kind of betrayal and not become that. If they could choose to stay open instead of closing off completely. The truth hit Celine like cold water. She'd been in an experiment, a test case, a way for Damien to answer a question he'd been asking himself for 6 years, whether survival required becoming a monster or whether there was another path. "You used me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." The honesty of it was almost worse than a lie would have been. "But not the way you think," Damien continued. "I didn't know what would happen. I didn't plan any of this. I saw you in that coffee shop, broken and angry, and I recognized myself. And I wanted to see what you'd do with that anger, whether you'd let it consume you or transform you. So you manipulated everything, the gala, the introductions, the assignment. I opened doors. What you did with them was your choice." "Bullshit." Celine's voice was shaking now, fury and hurt mixing together until she couldn't tell them apart. "You controlled everything, every move, every opportunity. You made it so I couldn't succeed without you." "That's not true." "Then why did Isabella end up on Marcus's list? Why was she the 10th subject?" Damien's expression darkened. "That wasn't me. That was Marcus testing you. He wanted to see if you could handle photographing someone connected to me without letting it compromise your work. And you didn't think to warn me? Would you have gone if I had?" Celine opened her mouth to argue, closed it, because he was right. If she'd known ahead of time, she probably would have refused, would have let fear make her choices instead of courage. Adrian, still standing a few feet away with Vivian gripping his arm, laughed bitterly. "This is perfect. You're both so busy using each other, you can't even see it." Celine turned on him, the rage she'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. "You don't get to talk. You committed fraud. You tried to destroy me out of pure selfishness." "I was desperate." Adrian's voice rose, cracking. "Everything was falling apart and you were supposed to still be there, still be broken, still need me. But instead you showed up here looking like you'd never cared about me at all, and He stopped, his face twisting. "I couldn't stand it, couldn't stand watching you succeed while I lost everything. So you tried to drag me down with you." "Yes." The admission came out raw, defeated. "And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I'm—" He looked at Vivian, then back at Celine. "I'm a coward. I always have been. I hurt the people who loved me because I couldn't stand the idea of them seeing how weak I really am." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Adrian—" "Don't." He pulled away from her. "You deserve better too. You always did. I just convinced you that I was the best you could get because I needed someone who wouldn't see through me." The confession spread through the ballroom like wildfire. People leaning in, phones probably recording, tomorrow's gossip already being written. Adrian Mercer, golden boy of New York real estate, publicly admitting to fraud and emotional manipulation. It should have felt satisfying. It just felt empty. Celine looked at the man she'd spent 2 years loving, and all she felt was tired. He wasn't a villain. He was just broken in ways that made him hurt everyone around him. "I'm not pressing charges," she said. Damien's head snapped toward her. "Celine, I'm not," she repeated more firmly. "On one condition. You sign paperwork removing my name from every loan, every credit line, every document. You withdraw the police report, and you stay the hell away from me for the rest of your life." Adrian nodded quickly, desperately. "Yes, anything. I'll sign whatever you need. Damien has lawyers who will draw up the documents. You'll sign them tonight, and then you'll leave." Adrian looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded again and turned away, Vivian following him with her head down. The crowd began to murmur, conversations starting up again now that the immediate drama had passed. Celine turned back to Damien. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "That was a mistake. You should have destroyed him." "Why? So I could become like you?" She shook her head. "I'm done destroying people, and I'm done letting you decide what I should do. I was trying to help you. No, you were trying to prove something to yourself." Celine's voice was steady now, calm. "You wanted to see if someone could survive betrayal without becoming closed off like you did. Well, congratulations. You have your answer. I survived. I stayed open, but not because of you, despite you. Damien flinched. Celine, I need you to understand something. She stepped closer, looking up at him. What you did, opening doors, making introductions, all of it, I'm grateful for those opportunities. But the work I did was mine, the photographs, the assignment, the career I'm building, that's not yours. You didn't create that, I did. I know. Do you? Because you keep acting like I owe you something. Like, without you, I'd still be broken. She took a breath. But I was never broken, Damien. I was buried. And I would have dug myself out eventually, with or without your help. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe it would have been harder. But I would have done it. The words seemed to hit him harder than anything else she'd said. His carefully controlled expression cracked, showing something raw underneath. I believe that, he said quietly. That's why I chose you. That's the problem. You keep choosing for me, deciding what I need, what's best, what I should do, but I don't need someone to save me. I need someone who trusts me to save myself. Damien's hands clenched at his sides. So what are you saying? I'm saying thank you for the opportunities and goodbye. She turned to walk away. His hand caught her wrist. Wait. Celine stopped but didn't turn around. Let go. Not yet. His grip was gentle, not restraining. You asked me earlier what I wanted from you, what this was all for. You answered. You wanted to see if someone could choose differently than you did. That's part of it, but not all of it. His voice was rough now, stripped of its usual control. I also wanted to see if I could choose differently this time. Celine turned slowly to face him. Damien's expression was open in a way she'd never seen before. No walls, no calculation, just raw honesty that looked like it cost him everything to show. 6 years ago, when Isabella left, I decided that caring about people was weakness, that trust was stupidity, that the only way to survive was to stay closed off and in control. He took a breath. And it worked. I rebuilt my company, made myself powerful, made sure no one could hurt me again. But I also made sure no one could reach me. And I've been alone ever since. Then why didn't you just go to therapy like a normal person? Celine's voice was sharp, cutting. Why drag me into whatever emotional experiment you were running? Because I didn't know I was running it until you called me out on it. His laugh was bitter. I told myself I was helping you, that I was being generous. But you're right. I was using you to answer questions about myself. And that was wrong. Celine's throat tightened. So what now? You apologize and expect me to forgive you? No, I expect you to walk away because that's what I deserve. Damien's eyes held hers. But before you do, I want you to know something. The doors I opened, the opportunities I gave you, those were real. Not because I'm a good person, but because I genuinely believe you're talented, possibly brilliant. And whether or not you ever speak to me again, I'm going to make sure those doors stay open. I know you don't need me. You just proved that. He released her wrist. But I'm going to do it anyway. Not because I expect anything in return, but because watching you transform yourself from someone broken into someone unstoppable was the most remarkable thing I've witnessed in years. And you deserve every success that comes from it. Celine stared at him, trying to find the manipulation in his words, the hidden angle, the transaction he was really proposing. But all she saw was a man who'd built his entire life around control finally admitting he had none. I'm still leaving, she said. I know. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I understand. But she hesitated. If you're serious about choosing differently this time, maybe start with being honest. Not just with me, with yourself. About what you actually want from your life instead of what you think you should want. Damien's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. That sounds suspiciously like therapy advice. It is. You should try it sometime. This time his smile was real, if brief. Maybe I will. Celine stepped back, putting distance between them. Goodbye, Damien. Goodbye, Celine. She walked away then, through the silent ballroom, past the staring faces and whispered speculation. She didn't look back, didn't let herself hesitate. Because if she stopped moving, she might change her mind. And she needed to do this, needed to prove to herself that she could walk away from someone who'd offered her the world, even if that world came with strings attached. The cold night air hit her face as she stepped outside. Manhattan stretched out around her, Millions of lights, millions of stories, millions of people fighting their own battles. She pulled out her phone and called a car. While she waited, she checked her messages. 3 texts from Marcus, all sent within the last hour. The issue goes to print next week. Your work is going to change lives. I just got a call from National Geographic. They want to talk to you about a potential assignment. You're going to be fine, Celine. Better than fine. She read them twice, letting the reality sink in. Her career was back. Not because Damien had handed it to her, but because she'd done the work. Captured the truth. Proven she had something to say that people needed to hear. Everything else, Adrian's betrayal, Damien's manipulation, all the pain and chaos, had just been noise. The work was what mattered. The car pulled up. Celine slid into the back seat and gave the driver her address. As they pulled away from the Blackwell, she looked back one last time. Through the lit windows, she could see the gala continuing. People dancing, drinking, pretending their lives were perfect while hiding their private disasters. 6 weeks ago, she'd walked into that room terrified and broken. Tonight, she'd walked out whole. Not because she'd won some battle or gotten revenge on everyone who'd hurt her, but because she'd finally understood something Damien had tried to teach her, even if he'd gone about it the wrong way. Her worth had never been something other people had the authority to decide. 3 months later, Celine stood in a Brooklyn gallery surrounded by her work. The March issue of Lens and Light had hit newsstands 2 weeks ago with her feature on the cover. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Media interviews, assignment offers, collectors fighting over the limited edition prints. Marcus had been right. The work was changing lives. But tonight wasn't about that feature. Tonight was her own exhibition. 20 new portraits shot over the past 2 months, exploring the theme of transformation through crisis. Some of the subjects were familiar: Jordan Price, Elena Reyes, Maya Sullivan. Others were new. Women she'd met through the magazine work, through random encounters, through the strange networks that formed when you started looking for stories of survival. And hanging in the center of the gallery, larger than all the others, was a self-portrait. Celine had shot it in her apartment on a Sunday morning, natural light streaming through the windows, her camera on a timer. She wasn't smiling, wasn't performing, just standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, looking directly at the lens with an expression that held everything: the pain, the anger, the exhaustion, the stubborn refusal to stay down. She'd titled it, "Still Standing." "It's extraordinary," a voice said behind her. Celine turned to find her mother standing there, dressed elegantly as always, but with tears in her eyes. "Mom!" Celine's throat tightened. She hadn't been sure her mother would come. They'd barely spoken since the family dinner where Adrian had made his choice public. "I owe you an apology," her mother said quietly. "I spent so many years pushing you toward stability, toward the safe choices, that I made you think your art didn't matter. That you didn't matter unless you were attached to someone successful. You were trying to protect me. I was trying to control you, make you into a version of myself that I thought would be happy." Her mother's hand trembled as she reached out, then dropped. "But I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Celine felt something crack in her chest, years of resentment and hurt and desperate need for approval finally breaking open. "I forgive you," she said, and meant it. Her mother's face crumpled. "Thank you." They stood there in the crowded gallery, surrounded by strangers and art and the evidence of Celine's transformation. And for the first time in years, something between them felt honest. "Your father wanted to come too," her mother said after a moment, "but he wasn't sure you'd want to see him. Tell him to come to the next one." "There'll be a next one?" Celine smiled. "There'll be a lot of next ones." Her mother squeezed her hand and moved away to look at the other portraits. Celine walked through the gallery, listening to fragments of conversation, watching people engage with her work. A journalist from the Times was interviewing one of her subjects. A collector was negotiating with the gallery owner about purchasing a print. Critics she recognized from publications she'd read for years were studying the images with serious expressions. This was real. This was happening. She'd built this, from ruins and rage and refusal to stay small. "Celine Voss?" She turned to find a woman in her 60s extending a hand. Silver hair, sharp eyes, expensive suit. "Helen Park," the woman said. "I run the Park Foundation. We fund emerging artists through grants and residencies." Celine shook her hand. Nice to meet you. I've been following your work since the lens and light feature. You have a remarkable eye. Helen gestured at the exhibition. And this confirms it. I'd like to discuss a potential residency program. 6 months, fully funded, working with communities who've experienced collective trauma, natural disasters, economic collapse, that sort of thing. Celine's pulse quickened. That sounds incredible. It would be challenging. Remote locations, difficult subjects, but I think you're equipped to handle it. Helen pulled a business card from her purse. Call my office next week. Let's talk details. She walked away before Celine could respond. Celine stared at the business card, her heart hammering. 6 months ago, her entire life had been tied to one man, one relationship, one narrow definition of success that had required making herself smaller. Now she had opportunities coming from directions she'd never imagined, and every single one of them existed because she'd refused to stay buried. Congratulations. The voice made her turn. Damien stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable in a way she'd never seen before. He wore a dark gray suit, no tie, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Celine's stomach twisted. What are you doing here? I was invited. Your gallery sent an announcement to their mailing list. He gestured around the space. I won't stay if you don't want me here. She should tell him to leave, should maintain the boundary she'd set 3 months ago when she'd walked out of the Blackwell and told him goodbye. But part of her, the part that still didn't fully understand what had happened between them, wanted to hear what he had to say. You can stay, she said finally. But if you're here to take credit for any of this, I'm not. Damien looked at the self-portrait hanging behind her. That's all you. I can see it in every image. The work is yours. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Damien said, I've been in therapy. Celine's eyebrows lifted. Really? Twice a week for the past 2 months. He paused, searching for words. Difficult, uncomfortable, but necessary. What made you start? You did, when you told me to be honest with myself about what I actually want. He met her eyes. Turns out I've been lying to myself for years about a lot of things. Like what? Like whether power and success actually make me happy. Whether control is the same thing as safety. Whether being alone is really protection or just punishment I've been inflicting on myself. His mouth curved into a self-deprecating smile. My therapist has a lot to say about my avoidance patterns. Despite everything, Celine felt herself smile. I bet she does. I'm not expecting anything from you, Damien said quickly. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or another chance or anything. I just wanted you to know that what you said mattered. It changed something. Celine studied him. He looked different somehow, softer around the edges, less like a fortress and more like a person. I'm glad, she said honestly. I also wanted to tell you that Adrian signed all the documents. Everything's been cleared from your name, the loans, the police report, all of it. I know. His lawyer sent me confirmation last month. And Vivian left him, moved to California, I heard. Good for her. Damien nodded. Then, carefully, are you happy? The question caught her off guard. Celine looked around the gallery, at her work on the walls, at the people engaging with it, at the future spreading out before her like an open road. Yes, she said, and meant it. Not every minute, not perfectly, but yes, I'm happy. Good. Damien's voice was rough. That's good. He started to turn away. Damien, Celine called. He stopped. Thank you, she said, for the opportunities you opened. Even if your reasons were complicated, the doors were real, and I'm grateful. Something crossed his face. Relief, maybe, or gratitude of his own. You would have found those doors eventually, he said. I just moved up the timeline. Maybe, but I'll take the head start. Damien smiled then, a real smile, warm and unguarded. Take care of yourself, Celine. You too. He walked toward the exit, stopping once to look at one of the portraits near the door, the image of Jordan Price in her kitchen, exhausted and determined and alive. Then he was gone. Celine stood there for a moment, letting herself feel the closure of it. Not a happy ending, not a dramatic reconciliation, just two people acknowledging what they'd been to each other and choosing to move forward separately. It was enough. Celine, Marcus pushed through the crowd, grinning. The Times critic just told me this is the best new work she's seen all year. You're going to be a household name by tomorrow. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm serious. This is exactly what the photography world needs right now. Raw, honest, human. He grabbed her arm. Come on. There's someone from the Whitney who wants to meet you. Celine let him pull her through the gallery, introducing her to curators and critics and collectors. People shook her hand, praised her work, asked about future projects. It was overwhelming and exhausting and exhilarating. An hour later, when the crowd had started to thin, Celine found herself standing alone in front of her self-portrait again. Still standing, she read aloud, testing the title. It was true. She was still standing, not because she'd won some battle or gotten revenge on everyone who'd hurt her, but because she'd learned that survival wasn't about becoming hard enough that nothing could touch you. It was about staying soft enough to feel everything, the pain, the joy, the messiness of being human, and choosing to keep going anyway. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously. Hi. It's Vivian. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm in California now, starting over. Got a job at a nonprofit. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work. I wanted to say thank you for the flash drive, for giving me a chance to do the right thing, and I'm sorry for all of it. I hope you're doing well. Celine read the message twice. Then she typed back, I'm glad you're building something real. Good luck. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was acknowledgement. Recognition that people could change, could choose to be better than their worst moments. Maybe someday they'd rebuild some version of sisterhood, or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, Celine's worth wasn't tied to whether Vivian found redemption. Her phone buzzed again, this time from a number she recognized, Isabella Chen. Saw the exhibition announcement. Can't make it tonight, but wanted to say congratulations. You did exactly what I hoped you would, told the truth without letting it destroy you. Proud of you. Celine smiled and typed back, thank you for everything, for being brave enough to share your story. That's what we do, right? Survive and tell the truth about it. Good luck with everything, Celine. You're going to do remarkable things. Celine pocketed her phone and walked to the gallery windows. Outside, Brooklyn spread out in the darkness. Streetlights and car headlights, and the distant glow of Manhattan across the river. The city that had almost broken her. The city she'd learned to survive in. The city that was now hers in a way it had never been before. Someone touched her elbow. She turned to find the gallery owner smiling. We've sold 8 prints already, he said, and I have 3 museums asking about a traveling exhibition. This is incredible, Celine. Thank you for believing in the work. Thank you for creating it. He squeezed her shoulder and moved away to handle another customer. Celine stood there as the night deepened, watching her reflection in the gallery window overlay the city beyond it. 6 months ago, she'd been drowning, buried under other people's betrayals and her own mistakes. Now she was building something that belonged entirely to her, not because she'd become harder or colder or more ruthless, but because she'd learned that her worth was never something other people had the authority to decide. She was enough. She'd always been enough. She just hadn't known it until she'd lost everything and discovered that she could rebuild from nothing. The gallery lights dimmed slightly as the exhibition began to close for the night. The last few visitors filtered out, thanking her, praising her work, promising to follow her career. Celine walked through the space one more time, looking at each portrait, remembering the stories behind them. The women who'd survived and transformed, the ones who'd refused to let failure be the end of their stories. She was one of them now. Not a victim, not a survivor, just a woman who'd been knocked down and chosen to stand back up. And that choice, made every single day, in small moments and large ones, was the only victory that mattered. Celine grabbed her jacket and walked out into the Brooklyn night. The air was cold but not harsh. Spring was coming. She could feel it in the slight softening of the wind, the promise of warmth underneath the chill. She started walking toward the subway, no particular hurry, just moving through the city like she belonged there. Because she did. This was her city, her life, her story. And she was just getting started. Somewhere above, stars pushed through the light pollution, small, distant, but stubbornly visible. Celine looked up at them and smiled. Then she descended into the subway station and headed home, ready for whatever came next.